east of Liaodong, bordering other early states like Joseon, Okjeo, Buyeo, mountainous terrain mostly, limited plains. So the people were adapted to that self-sufficient, but maybe a bit frugal with food.
Similar to neighbors like Buyo.
Shared language and some customs, yeah. But the sources say they had different temperaments, different clothing styles.
So Goguryeo gives us this valuable baseline early statehood, education, military thinking, cultural roots that still resonate today.
Definitely. Okay, let's jump way forward. Sustainability. What's South Korea doing now?
Right, a very current issue. Our source highlights a pretty strong commitment to carbon neutrality. They're aiming for a 40% cut in greenhouse gases by 2030 compared to 2018 levels.
That's ambitious. And net zero by 2050.
That's the goal. And they're backing it up with serious investment in climate tech. We're talking what, USD 107 billion by 2030?
Wow, that's significant. And they expect job creation from that too.
Yeah, projections are around 100,000 jobs and maybe launching 10 or so unicorn companies, billion-dollar startups in the green tech space.
So it's an environmental and an economic strategy. What about their energy mix? How are they planning to get there?
It's a mix. They want to boost renewables and hydrogen to nearly 24% by 2030, but also, interestingly, a big role for nuclear power aiming for over 32%.
Okay, so a balanced approach, not just renewables. Are they looking outwards too? International cooperation.
Very much so. The source emphasizes cooperation on education, innovation, technology, trying to tackle sustainability globally.
And they're inviting international partners in, businesses, investors.
Yeah, there's an open invitation to join their sustainable development push. They
Oh,
clearly want to be seen as a leader in this space.
makes sense. It's a global challenge, requires global solutions.
Okay, from green tech to tourism, South Korea as a destination, what's the picture there based on recent insights?
Well, it's a bit mixed, according to our 2024 source. Global issues, the war in Ukraine, inflation, China's economy slowing down, those have had an impact, like everywhere.
But K-culture is a huge draw, right?
Massive. It's really boosted South Korea's image and appeal internationally. Seoul, in particular, is getting a lot of recognition,
Like what?
climbing the ranks in global city tourism lists.
Mm.
Euromonitor had it 14th globally, fifth among non-European cities. It was one of the most searched places on Airbnb in 2022. Global Traveler magazine named it Best Leisure City in Asia for 2023.
So the appeal is definitely there. Namsan Tower, Lotte World, those kinds of attractions.
Yeah, K-culture plus diverse leisure activities,
Mm.
but there are some significant challenges for foreign tourists.
Ah, okay. Like what?
The biggest one seems to be digital. Difficulty using common global apps like Google Maps or Uber.
Really? In tech-savvy Korea? Why?
IT regulations. Specifically, the Spatial Information Management Act restricts exporting map data. Negotiations with Google failed years ago because Google wouldn't agree to blur certain security facilities on the maps.
So national security versus tourist convenience, that's a tricky balance.
It is. And the source calls these Galapagos-style regulations, suggesting they're kind of isolated and potentially hindering tourism growth. Language barriers and planning and navigation are also mentioned.
Any other issues?
The report references past problems, particularly with Chinese group tours before COVID. A 2019 study found declining satisfaction.
Why was that?
Too much focus on mandatory shopping stops, often at places selling unfamiliar brands, maybe with unclear pricing, pressure to buy, long hours spent shopping.
Not the cultural experience people were hoping for.
Exactly. And even reports of unkind guides sometimes. This ties into another point. A relatively low repeat visit rate compared to, say, Japan.
Oh, what are the numbers?
Around 53% repeat visitors for South Korea versus over 77% for Japan in 2022.
That's a big difference. What does that suggest?
Well, the report suggests maybe some operators are focusing too much on short-term profits rather than long-term visitor satisfaction and encouraging people to come back.
But it's not all negative. The natural beauty is a big plus.
Absolutely. Mountains, rivers, islands, cultural heritage sites. And Seoul itself offers that blend of hyper-modernity right next to nature, like the Han River running through it, Namsan Mountain. Tourists seem to really appreciate that.
So huge potential driven by K-culture and natural assets, but some practical hurdles, especially digital ones, and maybe a need to focus more on sustainable, high-quality tourism experiences.
That sums it up pretty well. Addressing those friction points seems key.
Okay. Let's switch to education again, but take a longer historical view this time. We touched on Goguryeo.
Right. And moving forward, the Goryeo dynasty had its own top institution, the Gutjagam, building on Silla's earlier Confucian college. Curriculum still heavy on Confucian classics. Civil service exams were crucial.
Then the Joseon dynasty expanded those exams, right? Civil, military, technical roles.
Correct. And during Joseon, those village study halls, the Siodang, became really important for giving commoners access to basic education.
Then came the modern era, late 1800s onwards.
Big changes then. More government involvement, modern schools with structured curricula, mind-body training, language, math, science, arts, and the first modern textbooks.
And missionary schools played a role.
A really important one, especially for women's education. They established the first girls' schools, like IFA in 1885, challenging societal norms.
Fast forward to post-liberation after 1945. What happened then?
A massive expansion of universities. Government policy encouraged it, and there was huge public demand. Kaijo Imperial University became Seoul National University, modeled more on the American system.
And enrollment just exploded.
Skyrocketed. Higher education attendance rates approached 100% by the 2000s. It became almost universal.
But this led to intense competition, didn't it? Weren't there policies to try and ease that?
Yes, like getting rid of middle school entrance exams in '68 and standardizing high schools later on. Efforts to level the playing field and reduce the examination hell.
And what about learning beyond school? Lifelong education.
Also a focus. Things like the Korea National Open University, established back in '72, open high schools, trying to provide ongoing opportunities.
And looking ahead, what skills does the system aim to build now?
The source lists competencies for the future. Self-management, handling information, creative and critical thinking, communication, community spirit, even aesthetic and emotional development. A very 21st century skill set. It reflects a shift towards holistic development.
Okay, our final main area. The Korean wave. Hallyu. Its global impact.
Yeah, it's incredible. The term itself, coined by Chinese media in the '90s,
Yeah.
and the South Korean government actively supported its promotion.
And the results have been pretty significant.
Understatement. Huge economic and political benefits. It's massively boosted South Korea's global competitiveness and its soft power cultural influence. They rank around 15th globally in soft power now.
Quite a journey for a nation with its history of conflict, and now the 14th largest economy.
Exactly. And Hallyu isn't just K-pop and dramas anymore, is it?
No, it's acted as a facilitator for broader cultural exports, classical music, theater, art, literature, dance.
Like Baby Shark.
Right. That global kids phenomenon came from a Korean company, Bingfong. Shows the reach.
Where did the wave hit first?
Initially strongest in China and Japan, then spread through Southeast Asia, the Middle East, Europe. It's truly global now.
And it's fostered ongoing cultural exchange, like between China and South Korea for over 20 years now.
Yeah, it acts as a cultural bridge.
So bringing it all together, how does this long history shape modern Korean culture?
Our final source really stresses that modern identity is woven from these threads. Ancient traditions, historical events, collective experiences.
The influence of old dynasties like Silla, for instance, their skills in metalwork, ceramics that legacy inspires modern craftsmanship, those gold crowns, the pottery we see in museums.
Tangible links to the past, and the philosophical foundations laid back then.
But more recent history is powerful too. The Japanese colonial period, 1910, 1945.
A very difficult, contentious era.
Definitely. Forced assimilation, cultural suppression.
Yeah.
It created a really strong drive to reclaim and preserve Korean traditions afterwards, and it deeply influenced Korean nationalism.
And we see efforts to preserve culture today.
Yeah, and education teaching traditional arts, history, language, more cultural festivals, events, and technology plays a role too.
How so?
Well, it's a double-edged sword, right? Tech offers amazing tools for documenting culture, sharing it globally via virtual platforms, social media, but there's also the risk of cultural dilution in a globalized world.
That tension between preservation and globalization.
Exactly.
So wrapping up this deep dive, what are the main takeaways? South Korea is clearly a nation defined by, well, rapid, multifaceted change.
Absolutely. From family life to the economy, defense, global culture, huge transformations.
But alongside that change, those deep historical and cultural roots remain incredibly important, shaping its identity.
And we saw some surprising things, didn't we? That incredibly early national education system in Goguryeo.
Yeah. And the paradox of digital barriers hindering tourism in such a tech-forward place.
The low repeat tourism rate, too, hinting at that tension between quick profits and long-term visitor happiness.
And just the sheer endurance of influence from ancient times right alongside the very modern force of Hallyu.
It's a fascinating mix.
So a final thought for you, our listener. South Korea's journey from a war-torn nation to this global economic and cultural force is pretty remarkable.
What lessons might other developing nations learn from its specific blend, embracing modernity while actively working to preserve a distinct heritage?
And looking ahead, what challenges might come from navigating that line between global integration and maintaining cultural sovereignty in our super-connected world?
Something to ponder. It's a dynamic story that's still unfolding.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.